Yeah, so Tom, first of all, it was a shocking attack, clearly, and my thoughts are with Bishop Emmanuel, Mario Emmanuel, and the other victims, Father Isaac and a number of other victims who were stabbed by the assailant. I will say this, though, too. The police, the first responders also sustained injuries, and it was deeply disappointing that they were there doing their job to protect, to respond to what is now identified as a terrorist attack, and there was violence committed against them, and that's really unacceptable and it's deeply disappointing. I understand the Assyrian community, and that for viewers that are watching this, they have been persecuted for hundreds of years. ISIS basically displaced 500,000 Assyrian Christians, destroyed their places of worship, killed and kidnapped them. So they're very hypersensitive, understandably, to an attack on one of their faith-based leaders, but it in no way should justify any violence against the police. To your point about the nature of the attack, obviously the investigation is underway, but we do know from the press conference from the Prime Minister and the heads of the security agencies, the AFP and the Director General of ASIO, that this is now they're being describing it as a religiously violent motivated attack. I've seen some of the footage that you're talking about, and I understand Arabic, and there were those statements made, but there's still a lot to understand, obviously, about what motivated this 16-year-old boy to conduct the attack.
So is it just in time we'll hear that from authorities? I'm just trying to recollect past instances where I feel as though normally once it's established it's religiously motivated, you usually know the faith of that person, and why this time it's just being branded as religiously motivated and it's sort of ending there.
Well, there's different reporting that's going on, obviously, but I think we've seen some of the mistakes made about going out too early, making claims in the media or in social media about identities or motivations. Right. And I think it's important to wait for the authorities to be clear.
People also need people to be up front, right?
Yeah.
So it's wait until that's clear and then we get more.
I will say this about this whole thing. It's like the thing that's really important here is for religious leaders, community leaders to really make sure that they bring down and de-escalate the temperature, because people are very, very upset, clearly. We don't want to see any more retaliatory violence. We don't want to see any further violence amongst communities. We don't want to see further disruptions to social cohesion in our multicultural communities. It's under great stress at the moment. The PM talked about the harmonious multicultural society we have. That's been built up over decades, Tom, by generations of Australians. It wasn't an accident. It was through hard work. And we have a real responsibility and obligation to maintain that social cohesion. And I would ask, even talking to the Assyrian community, you hear people out the front there saying eye for an eye, but, have a think to that congregation. What would the bishop ask you to do? It would be to turn the other cheek and forgive.
We heard eye for an eye coming through in that audio.
Yeah.
That was a pretty scary looking situation. That must be a real worry. We don't see that much in Australia.
Yeah, and I think most Australians would agree, and certainly my view, that we don't want to see this kind of violence, these kind of animosities play out in Australia. Australians are pretty fair-minded people, and we don't want to have some of these ancient animosities, sectarian conflicts play out in our country. We're sensitive and we're tolerant for people and their different backgrounds, and we embrace that, but it's really important that we maintain that social cohesion.
We let people speak out as well. So what do you make of the fact this bishop was described as controversially compared religions with others, which perhaps made him a target?
Perhaps, and again, that's part of the investigation. I think, again, there is free speech in this country. There's also, in my view, and this is my view, the importance of being respectful to others and their faith. So you're always trying to get that balance,
Do you think he was disrespectful?
Well, it's hard to tell. I mean, I think that people will go through...
What's your view? Has he been disrespectful?
He's certainly provocative in some of the assessments that he made and in some of his sermons. But again, we do have free speech in this country, and it's important to note that. I think what's most important here with respect to these communities is that the leadership of those communities, as I said earlier, really talk to the communities about maintaining a peaceful response to this. There's understandably a lot of people who are angry and upset, but there needs to be leadership here to ensure that we have no further violent activity.